This is Sky Sports, a part of the British Sky Broadcasting Network.
This week on NHRA Today, Bonin goes on to win in the Buckeye State, while Doug springs to his first Top Fuel title. WJ drives to win number 5, and Movie Madness descends on the drags. From Larry Morgan Racing in Newark, Ohio, these stories and more on this edition of NHRA Today. Throughout its history, drag racing has attracted innovators, people with a better idea on how to go quicker and faster. In the nitro classes during the last decade, such advances as the high-mounted rear wing, onboard computers, and lockup clutches have helped to send speed soaring and time tumbling. One category in which radical change has been uncommon is pro stock, which relies on strict rules to ensure close competition. Most technological ideas in the class have been gradual, but coming on the horizon is an idea that may replace evolution with revolution. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of NHRA Today. I'm Steve Evans, and we're here at Larry Morgan's to show you what may be the next radical change in pro stock. It's called torque arm suspension, and its designer, chassis builder Don Ness, has flown in from Minnesota to show you exactly how it works. You'll be the first to ever see it. If you have a drag car using ladder bars or four-link suspension, you don't want to miss this half hour. Also, in that we're nearing mid-season, we'll bring you a review of all 4 pro categories. But first, we must find out what's hot. Call me old-fashioned, but I love those polished 17-inch wheels on the front of a Top Fuel dragster instead of these things that everybody runs today. Kenny Bernstein, he disagrees with me. He thinks the things are pretty. Then why are these on the front of your brand new car?
You sound like Armstrong. He loves those big ones down there also. Really, obviously, we're doing it for qualifying. We're trying to go a little quicker, and with a longer rollout with a bigger wheel, we'll get a little quicker elapsed time.
During eliminations, Kenny gave in to crew chief Dale Armstrong and left the tall wheels on. And although his reaction time suffered, he did run quicker than he qualified in the first 2 rounds. Another Top Fuel team experimenting with change in Columbus was defending champion Don Prudhomme, who turned over the tune-up of his car to crew members Dana Kimball and Dickie Venable. The Snake on Tuesday announced that crew chief John Medlin had left the team by mutual agreement. And that's what's hot. Before we show you the new rear suspension system, let's have a look at what is currently under every pro stock car, including Larry Morgan's Oldsmobile. It's called 4-link or 4-bar. There's 2 bars on each side, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and all they really do is locate the rear end, and they're adjustable to control its pivot point. Throw in a couple of coilover shocks and this wishbone to center the rear end, and you pretty much got it. Now with this system, the only movement you've got is up and down on the rear end. Now, while I extricate myself and find Don Ness, here is Dave McClellan with the Pro Stock Review.
As we reached the middle of the year, it certainly came as no shock to anyone that the dominant force in pro stock racing was Warren Johnson, the Winston champion. But the pleasant surprise has been the rise to competitiveness of Warren's son, Kurt Johnson.
Having driven 4 different cars in 4 races at the first of the year and crashing the one car and being fortunate enough to have the power under the hood from Warren Johnson, there's nothing like it.
Kurt has certainly learned that father knows best, as 3 of Warren's 5 wins have been at his expense. But despite the dominance of the GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile, the professor of pro stock knows better than to start an early celebration.
The difficult part is to try and maintain this momentum over the balance of the season, and that'll be what determines whether we win another championship or not.
The strongest running non-Johnson of '93 has been Scott Jeffreyon, who after 9 career runner-up finishes finally collected his first pro stock victory with a win over Bob Glidden in Memphis.
We're starting to gain some consistency here at this Mopar Parts Dodge Daytona, and that's what we've been looking for, and we're finding it, here at mid-season, and hopefully we'll carry it through the rest of the season.
Hanging tough in the points race is our host, Larry Morgan, whose Castrol Super Clean Olds has finished in the runner-up spot in 3 final rounds, and Bob Glidden, who earned his 83rd career victory with a close win at Houston. The final round in Columbus featured the third rematch between the Johnsons. Kurt in the near lane was way too anxious off the line, shut it off, and watched dear old Ed charge to yet another victory.
The object is to win at anything I play at, and this is definitely getting a little harder, so we're just going to have to keep working a little harder.
The 5 victories for Warren Johnson have vaulted him firmly into the #1 spot, followed by Kurt Johnson and Scott Jeffrey on. Bob Glidden is 4th. Larry Morgan rounds out the top 5.
Well, there it is, the first torque arm suspension in a pro stock car. In this case, it's in Larry Morgan's developmental Oldsmobile. And here's the designer builder, Don Ness. Don, what's wrong with 4-link? Why this?
Well, about 2 years ago, I made a decision that the 4-link didn't have any more potential as far as a suspension system in the rear of the car.
Now, briefly explain how this works. We'll have time for detail later on.
Well, basically, when a car leaves the line, or the rear end has 4 separate movements that it tries to do. And through a system of arms, links, wishbones, and Coney shock absorbers, we're controlling each one of them. We isolated all the movements, and we control them individually.
Larry Morgan likes being first, and not just with suspension systems, as Frank Hawley tells us in this week's Fast Fact.
It takes a lot of power to move a heavy race car down the racetrack. And racers realize this, so they've been on a never-ending mission to make sure that their cars are operating at the required minimum weight. In fact, there's an old adage that says for every 100 pounds of weight you take off your car will go 1/10 of a second quicker. So racers do things like run magnesium parts where they could have run aluminum, or they'll run titanium parts where they used to run steel. But one guy's got them all beat. Larry Morgan took what was already fairly light, an aluminum valve cover, and he made a carbon fiber valve cover. I swear if I wasn't holding on to this thing, it'd just float right away. Well, it really only saves about 4 pounds per side over the aluminum cover, a total of 8 pounds. But the important element is this. They've taken that 8 pounds off the front of the engine. Now they can put it on the back of the car. That's going to give them a little better traction when they leave the starting line. That might not sound like much, but as close as the competition is, that could be the margin of victory.
Stay with us. When we come back, Don will show us how the torque arm suspension system actually works as the car travels the quarter mile. Welcome back to NHRA Today. You were looking at the right torque arm in this torque arm suspension. And with the forward shocks in the system disconnected, Don Ness can show us what an actual run might look like. How would it work?
Actually, of the 4 movements we were talking about, the rotational movement is controlled by the torque arm, which would look something like this with the clutch engaged. It would come up, come down, and go like this through the gear shifts. Another motion that we were talking about is the roll control, which is controlled by this system back here, which would go in this direction as the clutch is engaged.
We'll have more on this in just a bit. Right now, here is Dave McClellan with the Top Fuel Review.
The 1993 Winston Top Fuel points chase is the tightest of the professional classes and promises to be an all-out war to the finish. Current points leader Eddie Hill has driven his Pennzoil nuclear banana to 3 final round victories and isn't planning to slow the pace.
Couldn't be better for us. The only thing I'd like to do is just extend that lead a little and then hang on to it the last half of the year.
At number 2 in points and closing is Kenny Bernstein's Budweiser team. Since his Winter Nationals final round incident, Kenny's performance has been inconsistent. But a recent victory at Englishtown has him firmly back in the hunt for the championship.
I don't think this thing will come to where one guy gets out and stays in front and covers us up. I think we'll all struggle right down to the end, and it'll be a fight at Pomona, California in October.
Reigning Winston chap Joe Amato started the season with a dramatic victory at the Winter Nationals, but struggled for the next 4 races. Then in Memphis, the Valvoline team came back to take a sweet victory, keeping them right in the running.
Everybody seems to have their ups and downs. They run good for a couple races, then they go into a little bit of a slump. And that just shows you how tough Top Fuel really is to race these days.
It wasn't until the 3rd race of the year in Houston that Ed McCulloch and the McDonald's Top Fuel team finally sizzled as the ace notched his first victory of the year. Rounding out the top 5 is another veteran funny car pilot turned Top Fuel racer, Mike Dunn, who's been quick and consistent with 1 final and 3 semifinal round appearances. The final round at the Oldsmobile Spring Nationals came down to Kenny Bernstein and the Budweiser King in the near lane, and the always-on-the-edge entry of Doug Herbert. The cars left the line together, then Herbert gained a slight advantage and held on for his first ever final round victory.
last weekend, our cylinders were going in and out like guests at a party. And this weekend, there was 8 cylinders every run. Brissett's got her figured out, and looked like maybe we'll be tough the rest of the year.
Eddie Hill continues to hold the lead in the Winston point standings with Kenny Bernstein second. In third, Joe Amato. Mike Dunn and Ed McCulloch round out the top 5.
A footnote to Top Fuel at Columbus. Eddie Hill's crew chief, Fuzzy Carter, and crewman Lonnie Lewis were injured in a return road accident on Sunday. But both men have been examined and released from Columbus area hospitals and will be back in action next week in Topeka.
Tire shake is a huge pro stock problem, Don Ness. Can you address that? Can you help?
If it was possible to put scales underneath both rear tires on the way down the track on a 4-lane car, it would become obvious that the passenger tire would have a lot less pressure than the driver's one. This probably occurs at a point where the torque overcomes the preload necessary to make car launch straight. Right. With our new drag suspension and its total freedom of movement, we virtually eliminate one of the major causes of tire shake.
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
All right, right now here is Dave McClellan with his Funny Car Review.
The 1993 Winston Funny Car Points battle may be for second place as John Force holds an advantage of nearly 3,000 points over his closest competition, and John appears to be on a mission.
Everyone's doing their job, and knock on wood, it hasn't had any breakage. And if we can hold that up, even if the competition gets in a streak themselves, maybe we can still get a shot at that title.
Last year's Winston champ Cruz Pedregon has frequently been well off the pace, but he is confident this championship is far from lost.
We feel good about it. There's a lot of racing left, and a lot of things can happen.
Another strong performer has been Al Hoffman.
The car has been having a cylinder dropping problem, which we hope we've got cured now. I mean, Force is so far out in the lead right now. We really need to make a move here, or nobody's going to catch him.
For Chuck Etchells, 93 has been a particular difficult year as he and his crew have had to cope with the loss of crew chief Maynard Yanks. But with the addition of crew chief Tim Richards, Chuck expects a strong finish to the year.
It's really starting to come around, but Force has been allowed to get a huge start in everybody, and he's, got to catch up to the guy.
The Oldsmobile Spring Nationals Funny Car Final was a one-car affair as Gordy Bonin in the Hawaiian Vacation entry soloed the victory after Gordon Mineo was unable to make the call. The win was Gordy's first since 1981.
We're real pleased, especially right here in the humidity. We ran, 20s every pass we made. But hey, Leonard's from Louisiana. He can do humidity.
John Force continues to hold a big lead over Cruz Pedregon in the Winston point standings for Funny Car. In third is Al Hoffman, Chuck Etchells. Fourth, and Tom Hoover rounds out the top 5.
I got to noticing here in Jim Head's pit, after many of his runs, he immediately goes to his cell phone, dials a number, and he says, "Hello, Elmer, it's me, Jim." And he tells him what happened. And I thought, I don't know any Top Fuel tuners named Elmer. Turns out to be the legendary Top Fuel motorcycle racer, Elmer Trett. And Jim, what similarities can there be between the two?
Well, I think they're identical.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. I've been to a couple of Elmer's races recently, and I've kind of fallen in love with Top Fuel motorcycles.
But we know your car is flying. Something's working.
Yeah, a lot of things are working for us, Steve, and I owe a lot of it to discussions with Elmer.
A driver that has won this much hardware must know a thing or two about suspension systems. And Larry Morgan, you've tried the Ness unit. What do you think?
Well, it's refused to shake the tires, and that's one of our biggest problems. And it runs real smooth down the track, and I think it's really going to help us out.
When will you try it in an actual race?
Possibly Topeka.
That's soon. Okay, right now, here is Bob Fry with a Sportsman report that's sure to be a big hit at the box office.
June's the time of the year when all the big blockbuster movies come into the theaters, and this year's no exception. It's a great crop of films like Jurassic Park, The Last Action Hero, Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone, Hot Shots Part 2, and Made in America. Now, of course, if you can't get to the theater because you're at the racetrack, fear not. We've got all of those movies well represented right here at the Oldsmobile Spring Nationals. Speaking of Jurassic Park, look at this dinosaur.
Many years ago, this dragster roamed the pits racing in Top Fuel. Today, Dave Shoquist still puts the car through its paces, only this time in Supercon.
Seeing as how this thing's from the Stone Age, they don't believe that they work well, and they're pretty tricky to figure out. But once you get them figured out, they work as well as any car out there.
The Last Action Hero is Arnold Schwarzenegger's big summer box office hit. And out at Columbus, when people think of action and they think of hero, they automatically think of Danny Bastianelli. Danny, do you think you're the hero type?
Well, Bob, when the fast forward goes 185 at the finish line, I'm spinning them around, I feel like a hero.
I think you'll agree Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't have anything to worry about. One of the big summer action movies this year is Hot Shots Part 2. And when you think of that in the sport of drag racing, what comes to mind? Hey, this is the no-brainer, the Richardsons.
These guys have flown through the competition this year, already winning 3 national events and 3 divisional events between the 2 of them. Unfortunately for our heroes in Super Comp, they were edited out of the final round by co-stars David Graham and Mitch Smith in the far lane. But this was no full-length feature, as Smith redlit, giving Graham the easy win.
I'm thrilled. I can't believe we did this good. The 3rd time out with a car. It's a brand new car.
If you're afraid you're going to miss the new Sylvester Stallone thriller Cliffhanger, don't worry. We've got Competition Eliminator starring our very own, bad to the bone, Vinny Barone. Vinny, you ever get confused with Sylvester Stallone?
No.
Barone went through the comp field like Rambo until things got rocky for him in the final round against Ed Chuck Jr. This one wasn't a cliffhanger, as Vinny's old nemesis, the Tree, made a cameo appearance and knocked him out with a red light.
He's been real good. He's had O's all day, and he had to leave first. So I was just hoping that, he pulled a red on that one, and he sure did. He was early.
Made in America is the new summer box office hit starring Whoopi Goldberg and Ted Danson. And I don't know about you, when I think of Made in America, the first racer that comes to my mind is that Mariuccio Campolucci.
Salutare mia moglie Cristina, i bambini Sabrina, Michael e Vanessa. E ciao mamma, sono qui.
Okay, so 4 out of 5 isn't bad. Our Italian friend never made it to the big show, as his battery went dead in the staging lane.
Unfortunately, here at Columbus, for Mariuccio Campolucci, this is the end.
Now let's look at the rest of the winners from the Oldsmobile Spring Nationals. For NHRA Today, I'm Bob Fry.
The 1993 Pro Stock Bike Winston Points Chase finds a familiar name atop the standings, John Myers, whose Star Racing Suzuki struggled early in the year. But with the NHRA's new minimum weight rules in effect, some surprising names are in hot pursuit. Ron Ayers, whose consistent performance at Houston earned the veteran racer his first ever national event win, is currently in the number 5 spot. Holding on to 4th is Paul Gast, who has performed very well at virtually every race this year, carrying the Fast by Gast colors to 1 final, 1 semifinal, and 2 second-round showings. The 1992 Rookie of the Year, John Smith, dominated this year's Gator Nationals, earning the Anoka Ramsey Sports Center Rider his first ever national event win and a solid 3rd place position in points. The rider closest to the points leader, no surprise here, Sunoco's David Schultz, whose final round victory over John Myers at the Southern Nationals, coupled with 2 runner-up finishes, has kept the 3-time Winston champion in contention. The finals of the Oldsmobile Spring Nationals came down to Paul Gast and John Myers, and Myers was never headed as he seized a 1/10 of a second reaction time advantage and cruised to a victory that holds a special meaning.
I was born here in Columbus, so this is 2 in a row at Columbus too, so we're real proud of that.
John Myers' victory here at Columbus has improved his lead in the Winston point standings. David Schultz is second. Then comes John Smith, Paul Gast, and Ron Ayers.
Stock racer Rob Youngblood wasn't even supposed to be at Columbus. Rob made the 36-hour tow from Idaho as an alternate to the Division 6 TRW All-Star team, replacing Cal Method. All Youngblood did was win the TRW All-Star race in stock, and the next day he finished runner-up in the Spring Nationals. Not bad for a guy who didn't win a race last season.
I'm just flabbergasted on how well we did as far as even getting to the final round of the national meet. And I think a lot of it had to do with some of the people that were helping me.
NHRA Today is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.